Peter, what reasons did the banks give you for refusing to fund you in the beginning?
Thanks.
Hear that? Yeah.
Yes, I did. So, I had banked with a bank that I will not name.
Yes, we don't want to be sued, Peter.
So, and the funny thing was, they always told me that, you're a priority, you're a privileged customer, and every time I'd go bank a check, I'd get a cup of tea. So when I went and asked them for a loan for my first 5 tuk-tuks, they referred me to the SME side of a business, of a bank, where I had to restart my relationship from scratch. And they actually asked me to bring my bank statements. So, and I was like, shocking. So what I just found is that when it came to support of businesses, at least for a startup, when you have an idea, I just found that, banks were really not wired to help companies. And essentially they want a company that's a little bit more established and all. And that's why then we had to look at using our own personal resources to get the business to a point where we could do external fundraising. So that was my journey with the banking system, including a bank collapsing with a significant part of the money that we first raised. So we've been through quite a bit, but I would say that we've had a very interesting journey as far as the local financing scene is concerned.
Okay, thank you for that, Peter. Another question for you is, Peter, you mentioned that you brought in people from other businesses. This viewer is asking, would you consider to partner with a business that provides complementary services in your sector? The value would be a win-win for both. Peter, you've got a pitch here. Can I connect you with him? So I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the thing is that, we're always on the lookout for people that we can then work with. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about what can we do for our customer out there? Because the thing is that for us, we have this like laser sharp focus on our mama mboga, on the kiosk and the duka. Those are the people who determine who we need to work with, because it's all about solving their needs or meeting and exceeding their needs. So happy to look at that.
Excellent, thank you. Another question for you, Peter, which was, at what point were you able to attract high-value employees? I assume here the question is that high-value employees means that the pay slip was pretty high, and how are you funding that? I think that's really the core of the question. Therefore, were you paying them from your pocket, or was it money from investors to be able to afford these high-value employees who've obviously contributed to your business?
It was a mixture of both. Initially, I had to fork out the money, but what we did is a lot of those early employees also got shares in the company as part of a financing package. Because the key thing is that you have to be able to sell the vision. And what happened, at least in those initial stages, was to then sell this vision of who we wanted to become and the journey to get there. So most of their compensation was a blend of equity and salary. Of course, once we got funding, we adjusted their compensation more or less to market rate. But at least for the early stages, we had to play a blend of both. And actually, right now, we're in the process of extending our share ownership program to more employees. So about another 60 employees are about to become shareholders in Twiga.
Fantastic, very good. Good to hear that. Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions for Susan. Is Absa offering early stage financing?
Mutsi, thank you for that question. A lot of the early stage financing, we're running it through our enterprise and supply chain development program, where it's really a closed loop sort of arrangement with our corporate clients, where we're then able to finance their early stage suppliers who are really probably having the second supply with them. So that's where we are currently able to support them. And if the corporate that you're then dealing with is not among our corporate suppliers, we can be able to have that discussion and see how we onboard them into this program. So largely, that's how we are able to fund them.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Susan. Another one for you, Susan, which you've answered, but which I'll just put so the viewer can know it's been answered. She's talked about trying to get discounting for one of our distributors, and I think Susan has agreed to do what? To engage with her. I think it's Prashna, right? That who has asked about getting discounting for a distributor, and Susan is saying they'll talk with Prashna to get a solution for that. Question for Peter Njonjo again would be, what part of your fundraising was for expansion across East Africa? And do you still think it's feasible to expand across East Africa? Assuming Peter is still on the call.
Yes, I'm still here. So actually, a significant part of our funding was around creating, as I talked about, the ecosystem that we have in Kenya, because as I highlighted, Kenya is still a significant opportunity. 2.3 trillion shillings spent on food every year. So a lot of the funding was focused on that. And right now, we're actually working towards, we had worked quite a bit on our West African expansion on account of all the networks that I had built while I was in that part of the world. And hopefully once Kenya Airways starts flying to West Africa again, that will be an opportunity for us to get started and hopefully get the operation going in that part of the world.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Question for Susan. Most founders find it hard to let go of their babies. Why did you decide to sell?
Susie.
Susie, sorry,
Okay.
Susie.
Why did I decide to sell? What is the most important? Yes, Susie Beauty is my baby, always will be. Where we had reached our capacity in terms of funds, in terms of capacity, in terms of even ability. And yeah, I needed that strategic partner, and they came into play. And you know, at the end of the day, what did I want to do? Is to keep the brand going, expand the brand as much as possible. All the plans I've had for her since the beginning. So it was a decision that I had to jump into. And at least, I mean, you know, most entrepreneurs understand it very well. They're like, oh, how did you even get that to happen to you? So, strong girl, big girl decisions had to be made. In order to keep the brand going and grow the brand as much as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question for you, Susie, which is that you said you needed more money than you asked for. What kind of things didn't you consider when you asked for less money than you needed for? In hindsight, what was it that you failed to consider?
So I think, you know, just doing this for the first time, you're trying to minimize as much as possible mentally, and you're even feeling like you're asking for too much. Like, who do I think I am? Like my business plan. I feel like, you know, we started off with a business plan at this number, and then we're still adding to it. And I'm like, this is too much. Let's not do that. And it was a very silly decision, and we should have just like gone all out, or even got an auditor, like somebody separate to just help us go through the numbers. But we were bootstrapping, and we were just trying to deal with everything on our own. And so that's what we came up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Andia, a couple of questions for you. Andrew, could you expound on the best model for elevator pitch presentations?
Okay, I don't know if there's a best model per se, but there are templates on what you should put in a pitch deck. And as far as elevator pitch, it really is a 30-second to 1 minute conversation about your business. So you have to assume that you would get stuck in the lift with a billionaire, and that's your chance to pitch your business. So it's very succinctly really being able to deliver your business. And a lot of the business accelerators, because they have pitch demo days, most of the pitches to actually tell the story about your business don't last for more than 5 minutes. So you've really got to pick what are the key areas, and it really is about the size of the market opportunity, as Peter has talked about, what your ability is to capture it, your team and how strong your team is, some of the forecast. Everybody loves numbers, as Susie has talked about, and what is the potential growth opportunity, and using that time to just really eloquently deliver why people should back you.
Can I just add something to that?
Please do.
In January, I went to London for an investment summit, just women around the continent. We went to pitch to 300 London investors, and there was literally a 2-minute timeline, and you have to give all the information as precisely as possible to these 300 people in a room. It's very stressful, but it's very, I think, very precise, and I think they appreciate that. Thereafter, you can talk, right?
Okay, very good. And I'd last to ask Peter to also make a comment on that, because he's obviously pitched at very scary levels. Peter, best model for pitching to big boys and big girls.
I think the thing is that put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're pitching to. They have an objective in terms of ensuring that they can safely deploy the capital and generate a return. So why should they why should they back you, and why should they feel that you've mitigated the risk against your execution? So the whole idea here is ensure that the idea is compelling but very, very simple to understand, because people are listening to hundreds of pitches every day. So is it compelling? Is it simple to understand? And then very quickly, do you have the capability to execute against what it is that you're saying? And if you're able to do that in a very, very compelling way, then what happens is that I think that should help you resonate with your target audience, because I think they're looking for ability to return on investment and ability to execute.
Okay, thank you very much. Another one for Andia. What are the risks in angel and venture capital financing? How do you mitigate that, especially at this time of COVID? And I think I'll also ask Peter to chip in onto that, because he's got a lot of financing from big funds.
Yeah, so I'll tackle angels and I'll let Peter do VCs. I think with angels, you're dealing with individuals, and this individual is either really successful in their career or is a really successful entrepreneur. Now, the individual, the one in their career, can get laid off. They can actually be subjected to think they can fall sick. Their priorities can change. And these are things that happen when you're dealing with individuals. They are not just an endless tap. And that's why we talked about you can go from angels, but you can also go from family offices where it goes beyond the individual and it's about a generation of wealth, which doesn't mean that that also can't be wiped out. It's not as if they're not immune, but it does mitigate some of the risks. So it's the fact that you're dealing with individuals, and individuals are also susceptible to the various shocks that are happening in the economy, like COVID, which really hasn't spared anybody, whether you're living in the US or whether you're living in South Africa. COVID is still an issue.
Okay, thanks, Peter. VCs.
So I would say that with venture capital, it really differs from stage to stage, depending on where you are in the funding cycle. So what you'll find is that when you're in the seed raise, or the very, very early stage for venture capital, there's a lot less diligence on a couple of things, because they're still looking at the vision. They're investing behind the vision. But as you start moving to later stages of funding, because from seed raise you then move to Series A, Series B, Series D, Series E, maybe until you're public. As you move through each of those stages, the focus starts moving away from vision and more to execution. So yes, you're raising more capital, but did you do what you were supposed to do? And that helps the venture capitalists more or less gauge the risk that there is inherent in the business as they move along. And that's essentially how it's mitigated. So what you find is that there are companies that are able to raise money in the early stages, and because of inability to execute, they then are not able to raise money at later stages. And I think that's essentially what I would call the venture capital cycle. And also for a venture capital fund, maybe you have maybe a percentage that is a success rate. There's inherent failure that you plan into your financial model, that there's some investments that will work, some will not work, but those that work will pay for those that don't.
All right, thank you very much. Back to Susan Situma. What do you require for SMEs who would like unsecured funding?
Okay. All right, a good question there. And one of the things you need to do is understand your debt service. Are you able to service the debt? It definitely needs to be higher than 1. And you could come in with your just your normal documents that you use to set up the business. Definitely need to have a business permit or license to operate the businesses. If the turnover for your business is below 30 million, you really don't need to come in with your audited financials. We use 12-month bank statement to do the assessment, to just see if there's any seasonality in your business, if the cash flows are stable. And then if during this period, we're really asking for projected cash flows to help you as an entrepreneur think through your business and how viable it continues to be, even in this COVID world. And then we'll do an assessment, do an application letter requesting for the finance. You can get into any of our branches. We do have business bankers there, SME bankers, or you can get access to an SME relationship manager, or you could write to us through the Business Club email address. It is businessclub.ke@absa.africa, and then we'll be able to support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So just as Calais, you know what to do. Find your nearest ABSA branch and walk in there, ask for an SME banker, and they'll walk you through the processes. ABSA has got a product called Wezesha, which speaks to SMEs, speaks to exactly the kind of need that you're talking about. Another question for Susan. Does ABSA have an interest in the innovative women/youths who have the potential to transform their societies through SMEs? If yes, how does one participate? I think it's SME with a bias towards women and youth. The answer is yes, but Susan will give us a breakdown of it.
Yeah, thank you. Leave the hard bits to Susan, right? Okay. Yeah, but yes, we do have quite a bit of interest in especially handling the women. In 2016, we partnered with International Trade Center, and we've been running a very successful partnership where we've been training women and exposing them to international markets and helping them package themselves to be able to negotiate and understand the landscape, especially when it comes to international trade. We've trained just over 4,500 in being able to learn good business practices and how they can access finance. We've also lent out close to 2.5 billion to women specifically. And therefore, we are willing to walk the journey in women. Earlier this year, as we were launching our brand, our CEO announced a 10 billion kitty that is for women for over the next 5 years. And we are executing that, and you continue to see us in the market really supporting women and youth.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And then to Susie, I think you need to write that book. First question is, what is the next stage strategic plan for the Suzy Beauty brand? And along with that is, what's your next venture going to be? You seem to have this serial entrepreneur bug.
I assume so. Okay. For Suzy Beauty, we're just trying to get through this season and see what's best to do next. Right now, what we're definitely focusing on is, increasing our online presence and being as active as possible there, because that's how we're getting most of the sales. And just see where the brand keeps on going, and just not giving up, obviously. For me, as Suzy Mokabi, I have a bunch of new projects going on as well. So I have a podcast going. I have, and inside of all of these, Suzy Beauty is still being carried. The Suzy Mokabi podcast, and then a few other brands that I'm talking to for other things. My purpose is to be an instrumental part of growing the African beauty industry. So that's what I'll be working on for the rest of my days. So Andia and Susan, I'll be talking to you guys after this. Thank you.
Very good. Peter, another one for you. Thank you, Susie. Some of the solutions to improving the ecosystem lies on policy advocacy and policy reforms, which are carried out by government. How did you at Trigger Foods go about this? Something to do with how you're dealing with the policy issues and the government issues for your business.
Well, I would say that to a great extent, there is really no policies right now that hinder you from raising funding. I think there was something circulating a few days back that was saying that the government now requires companies to cede 30% shareholding to locals. And I think, just clarification, that actually impacts companies that are seeking communication authority approval, for example, broadcasters or telecom companies and all. But I think the fundraising space is fairly unrestricted, and there's a lot of latitude in terms of what you can do. So, but I think the bigger conversation around policy is how does a government then support early stage capital or access to early stage capital? I think that would be a more pertinent question. As Andia mentioned previously, right now pension funds can allocate 10% of the allocations to private equity through funds, but could maybe something be allocated to venture capital, allowing riskier companies that are yet not cash flow positive or are still very, very early stage to access the capital they require to progress.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. Andia, back to you. Is there an appetite for asset-backed securities as a new form of debt financing across the region?
Wow, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Well, I mean, when I look at the African continent and I just see that it is basically an entrepreneurial world, we look at it and we see that SMEs are responsible for 80% of job creation. So I think it's about finding the right businesses. I think COVID has forced us to look inward. A lot of companies are building local supply chains, and we're going to find ourselves not really being persuaded to buy Kenya, build Kenya, wear Kenya on Friday. We will just be doing that naturally because it's what we can get. So to me, as you can see, many of you probably wouldn't have thought that an entity like ABSA would be doing what we're doing today, but I think a lot of financiers have recognized where the gap is where the opportunity is, but there's still a lot of work. I would like to emphasize with what Peter said on the early stage financing, but that is also something that is gaining considerable interest amongst investors. It's just a matter of finding out the right structure that meets the needs not only of the entrepreneur because they want to grow, but also mitigates and manages the risk for the investor. Remember, there are two parties here. Investment is not a bailout. It's not also a pity party. I went to so many investors and they said no to me. It's actually got to make sense. And as long as many people are able to benefit from that particular growth, then more investors will crowd in on it. So let's see how viable the opportunities are. And as long as there's a successful track record and revenue associated with it, then I think the investment structures will come along to support that.
Okay, another one for you, Andia. Is there a standard duration for the business incubation period?
I think it really depends on business to business. I mean, typically, we've seen businesses that have been around for more than 5 years, but are still very startup-like. And one of the reasons they're very startup-like, I think even Peter talked about having run his startup from his role in Coca-Cola after 6 years, is because a lot of the entrepreneurs are doing it on the side. When you now come and you decide to devote and take it to the full blown, so I feel like it's not a matter of how many years you've been in business, but what you've been able to achieve and what level of clients and traction and team you've been able to get so that the business itself can grow. You'll find some of the tech companies are quite young in terms of operation. A lot of them came after the global financial crisis, so they're fairly young businesses than what we know, but they are the global giants of today. So I think it really is about the traction and the market opportunity that the business is serving and the ability to execute that vision successfully.
Okay, thank you very much, Andia. Susan Situma, two for you. Number one, does ABSA support agro-business / agroforestry? And then the second one is, I have a dairy farm with an average of 45,000 a month. I want to expand, I need capital. What do I need to do?
Okay, very good question there. And within the ABSA SME products, we do have dedicated teams. We have an agronomist who's in-house, who is able to advise you on your business matters. We do have business development managers as well, and we have a head of agribusiness. So we run it dedicatedly as a unit that we give enough seriousness to. So in that regard, we do have agribusiness products that we offer. And our teams in the branches are actually able to support you if you go in there with an agribusiness need. And therefore, we can be able to look at your dairy farm and see how can we support you. We also do have, I think I can also talk to the Timiza platform that we also have, where you can access quick funds. So that's a platform run by ABSA, where it's mobile lending, where you can be able to access funds. I think also just related to that, Mutsi, if you'll allow me, we have a Lariba dedicated desk as well within the SME division. And in that respect, if you want to borrow using Lariba model, we can be able to support you. We have a dedicated trade finance desk as well that is also ably run by a specialist who is able to talk more into some of the guarantees that I was talking to earlier, the letters of credit and how to safeguard yourself. And we also have an insurance desk. So, and that's one of the things I find SMEs are not very well conversant with, and yet a very important instrument, especially during this period where it takes care of some of the uncertainties, whether it is workman compensation if somebody gets injured in your premises. So it's one of the benefits that you have if you come and bank with us at ABSA. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think from the questions we're getting, I think a lot of our viewers need to go either to an ABSA branch or get onto our website, because they're really pertinent questions and we have a ton of solutions for most of those particular issues. So get onto www.absa.co.ke and you'll get quite a lot of those answers, or walk into a branch. But there's a question here which I'll throw at the entire team, Peter and Susie and Andia and Susan, because my vocabulary is limited. Is there an opportunity for hypothecation mode of financing, especially for those in SME and financing? For the uninitiated, hypothecation is a model that was used to develop the cottage industry in India quite successfully. Question from Janet Masharia. Cottage industry in India, some model for financing. Are we familiar with what that is? I think we're probably familiar with the concept. Maybe it's a language that is a bit different. So I think, Janet Mashaya, that's a good question. We'll probably see if we can get some answer for that. And then as our parting shot, back to Susan Situma. Hang on a second, Peter. You must have an idea about hypothecation. You've been all over the world. Peter Njonjo.
To be honest, I was Googling as you were talking. So,
Janet Masharia, I have to apologize.
Let me not try and wing it. I have no. I actually don't know what hypothetication, or I missed that.
Okay. Do you know anything about the cottage industry in India?
No, not at all.
All right, Janet, we do take the question seriously. I think we're just amused that the panel vocabulary obviously needs to expand, but we'll deal with that.
Can I
Okay, Susan Situma will make an attempt to answer that.
Yeah. I believe hypothecation is taking a loan against something that you've probably bought. It could be your house and you want to take out a loan against it. I talked about earlier equity release, where we use an asset that you already have and release the capital from that house. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you mean, but if that's what it is, then we are able to look at the assets and see how we can unlock the capital from those assets.
Janet Macharia, Susan Situma will assign one of her smart talent to
I'll get your
look at this
consent.
and probably get a more comprehensive answer for you. Then our last shot, which will go back to Susan before we then do the closing bit, is number one, does the SME division of ABSA have an online marketplace where members can market their products or service? And number two, does ABSA have a platform that attracts equity investments that can use to broker deals for their clients? I think, Susan, that's a call into the future of what ABSA is doing. So I think that would be a brilliant parting shot for you to just talk about what we're doing to create markets and collaboration for our SME clients. Over to you.
Thank you. And it's one of the areas that we've seen a lot of interest, especially after COVID hit. A lot of customers are asking us, how can we be able to have them market their products even to the ABSA clients that are already there, and we do have quite a varied number of clients. So watch this space. Areas we're thinking about, how do we launch them? But currently what we have a very vibrant business club where we run networking forums, mentorship, coaching, and also within that business club, we've partnered with various partners, whether it's Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, ITC partnership, to see how do we collaborate and create sort of like networks and markets for our SME customers. And in there, we can be able to see how do we sort of like hook you up with what you would need to be able to grow your business. So I'd ask you to just maybe we have your contact since you've asked the question, would be able to get back to you and see how do we support you in that area. But definitely we are looking at various ways of also reinventing ourselves in banks and repositioning ourselves so that we can continue to remain relevant and to open new opportunities for our clients.